Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you all being here and allowing me to do this presentation remotely. My name is Rick Ginsberg. I'm the president of an organizational development company based in Denver, Colorado by the name of Beacon View Consulting. I am an industrial organizational psychologist. We do leadership development, executive coaching, and team cohesion. And I'm here to talk to you today about team chemistry and amongst three iconic baseball teams in the history of baseball. But first I want to say a simple thank you to Jim Gates for allowing me to present and for allowing me to do this remotely. For all of you for being here and for watching this video on this particular topic. And to Bill Simons for helping to put on the 2018 Cooperstown Symposium. Before we get started, we're going to talk about the lime. The lime that is has so many characteristics, but is in equal measures sweet, sour, it's bitter, and has a whole host of complex citrus qualities to it. And it's going to teach us something today about what we need to learn about team chemistry and the people who inhabit those teams and make them successful. The lime, it's the hero of the street taco, it's the star of the margarita, it can be stuck in a bottle of beer, it can be used in some of its varieties to make pie. It is the progenitor of perhaps a derogatory term for the English, based on its ability to carry a lot of vitamin C and pack a punch to prevent scurvy. It is nothing if not complex and enigmatic, and it would be a fool's errand to try to describe it in its entirety. But to know it is to love it, and to use it is to understand it enough to be able to access its powers. So we're going to put that lime aside here, and we're going to talk about baseball for a little bit. We're going to also talk about six particular roles that are present in all three of these teams, and perhaps other teams, other organizations, aside from baseball, in American culture. And they are the gamer, the lightning rod, the "O Captain, my Captain," the magistrate, the jester, and the top spinner. These six roles inhabit these three teams that we're going to talk about, all from different eras. And you're going to see how the people who inhabit those roles make those teams and propel those teams. The first baseball team we want to talk about are the 1947 Brooklyn Dodgers. This is Jackie's team, it's Branch's team, it's Pee Wee's team, it's the team that broke the color barrier, and it's the team that broke the St. Louis Cardinals for the 1947 National League pennant. There was a lot going on in 1947. The Cold War was raging. Harry S. Truman was creating the Central Intelligence Agency and the Joint Chiefs of Staff with the National Security Act, 1947. And there was also a lot of societal unrest. There was a lot of racial tension there, where soldiers had fought together side by side, and there are aspects of the armed forces that had been integrated. Baseball had still not been integrated, but it was about to be. The team ethos of the 1947 Brooklyn Dodgers might be able to be said to be rebellion and evolution. So keep those in mind as we talk about the players here. Let's talk about the lightning rod first. There are two lightning rods on this team. The first is Leo Durocher, who was the manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers prior to the 1947 season, who was actually suspended on account of potential allegations that he was consorting with gamblers. Leo Durocher was a fiery, loud, amazing personality. He was an incredible leader. And he was also an incredible supporter of Jackie Robinson. At one point, he took his entire team, because he understood that they were revolting about the idea of playing with Jackie Robinson, and he sat them down and he said, "I don't care if he's black, if he's yellow, if he has stripes like an effing zebra. I'm the manager of this team, and I say he plays." Leo Durocher was always being watched by the media, and one of the interesting things about a lightning rod a lightning rod in a particular organization, and in this case, in the 1947 Dodgers, is that what it does is it draws energy in to the team that might be dangerous. And it allows that lightning rod to be a little bit of a target so that energy can course through from outside. That's what Leo Durocher did. Jackie Robinson did that too. He was also a lightning rod in this team, in that all the eyes were focused on him, and it allowed some of the other team members to, while there was a lot of focus on Jackie and there's a lot of focus on the team, it allowed some of them to focus on their own particular skills. So I would argue that both Jackie and Leo Durocher were lightning rods in this team. There was a magistrate, the judge, and we're going to say that that was Branch Rickey. Branch Rickey, the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, who decided to bring Jackie Robinson in and ultimately integrate baseball. This is a quote from Branch Rickey. He said that all men anthropological come from the same source, with the same potentials, must have a potential equality and chance and opportunity, and that is so right, I think, that posterity will look back upon what we are doing today in our domestic issues here. They will look back upon it, I think, with incredulity, and they'll wonder what the issue is all about. I really think so. It's solved in baseball. It'll be solved educationally. It'll be solved everywhere in the course of time. I mean, it almost sounds like a judge's ruling from the bench. Who was the captain of the team? Pee Wee Reese, somebody that you might have heard of. Pee Wee had grown up in Louisville, Kentucky. His father had brought him, tried to preach social justice to him by bringing him to a particular tree that was near his home and pointing to it and making young Pee Wee understand that a man had once been lynched on that tree, and that certainly wasn't right. At one point when the Dodgers were playing the Cincinnati Reds in Cincinnati, this was the hometown of Pee Wee Reese, Jackie was being heckled very badly, lots of racist comments coming from the stands. Pee Wee walked over to him, put his arm around him, and simply stood there in solidarity with Jackie. This was the type of leadership that this team needed, and he was certainly a captain to be proud of, and that his fellow players were able to really follow. We're also going to talk about the top spinner. The top spinner is somebody who perhaps takes a supporting role. When you think about a top being spun, it's somebody who keeps it spinning, but doesn't necessarily move it in any particular direction. This is going to be Bert Schotten, who was the somewhat mild-mannered replacement for Leo Durocher, who had been suspended that year. He had just the right demeanor to be able to lead this team in the way that it needed to be led. There's another role here, and I forgot to mention. It's also the rabbit's foot. This is somebody who is so compelling that really ends up being a good luck charm for the particular team. It's somebody who's having an exceptional year. In this case, the 1947 Dodgers, it's actually Jackie himself. An incredible rookie by any measure. The team would not have had the success that it did. And the idea of what the rabbit's foot in a particular organization does is that people can focus their attention on the rabbit's foot. People can be excited about that particular person's individual achievements, and it can also take some of the tension off the team. There were some gestures on this team. We're going to say that was Pee Wee Reese among other people as well. A quote from Pee Wee said, "I used to tell Jackie sometimes when they were throwing at him, Jackie, they aren't throwing at you because you're black. They're throwing at you because they don't like you." So one of the things that the gesture does in any given organization, including this particular team, is allows energy to be taken out of the system. So if you think about the lightning rod taking energy in and protecting the system from outside forces, the gesture allows energy to be released and to be released effectively. Let's go on to the 1991 Minnesota Twins. The 1991 Minnesota Twins, there's a lot going on in that year. The Gulf War was raging. There were ground forces being put into Iraq and Saudi Arabia. The Rodney King incident was occurring, so 4 Los Angeles, California police officers had attacked Rodney King and beaten him. So there was racial unrest. The Soviet Union was dissolving. Mikhail Gorbachev, the year before, had just been in Minnesota himself, had been speaking there. And 2 teams, the Atlanta Braves and the 1991 Minnesota Twins, had both been in last place the previous year. And they had restructured the teams, and now they were in the World Series. This was the first time that this had ever happened. It was an amazing World Series. And the 1991 Minnesota Twins were an incredible team. The team ethos, I would say, of the 1991 Minnesota Twins was audacity and surprise. That's what sort of forged their identity. The Minnesota Twins moved aggressively in the offseason. They put a lot of veterans and a lot of rookies together, a lot of new people, and they took on a particular free agent by the name of Jack Morris, who was nothing if not a gamer. Jack Morris had been with the 1984 Detroit Tigers, and he was seminal in this year. He was just such an incredible player. His quote is that, "If I feel like King King, I'll throw like King King." And this was him prior to the 1991 World Series. People would said of him, he was the last of a breed, somebody who actually comes to the park with anger to beat you. I never went near him when it was his day to pitch. That was a teammate. We used to joke that Jack had low blood sugar. It was as if he hadn't eaten in a while and his chemistry would change. If he lost a game, it was the end of the world. But if he was happy, he'd be buying drinks, telling stories, and asking, "What can I do for you?" A true teammate, Jack Morris, an incredible pitcher who elevated the people around him to give it their all. There's also a player by the name of Kirby Puckett. Kirby Puckett was a Hall of Famer, also incredibly talented, unbelievably athletic, and always inspired his teammates to do better. Interestingly, he was also the leader of this team, and he was also the jester of this team. In many ways, Kirby Puckett played so many roles in the 1991 Minnesota Twins, who went on to win the World Series that year. Kirby was always smiling, Kirby was always laughing, and he would always say, "I'm going to put this team on my back," regardless of how dark it got, regardless of how painful and how poor the team was doing. He always wanted to put the team on his back, and he did, and people really followed that. There was also a top spinner and a magistrate, same person, Tom Kelly, who happened to be the Twins manager that year. Tom Kelly was the type of manager who always wanted to put the players first, and he was humble, and he understood how lucky he was to be playing in Major League Baseball, to be a manager in Major League Baseball, and how lucky his team was to be players. He would often take walks in the morning, and oftentimes he would come by honest working people who were working in factories, and he would actually bring the team to go look in the windows, to meet those people, and to see the hard work that they were doing, so that he could understand, and his teammates could understand, his players could understand, that this was a special opportunity that they had, and they should take advantage of it. There was a rabbit's foot that year on that team too. His name was Chuck Knobloch. He was the Rookie of the Year. He had 159 hits, a 281 batting average, a 351 on-base percentage, and a 350 slugging percentage. He won the Rookie of the Year that year. The last team we're going to talk about is the 2013 Boston Red Sox. What was important about this team? On April 15, 2013, there was a terrorist attack in Boston during the Boston Marathon. 2 bombs went off 14 seconds apart. 3 people died, hundreds of people were injured, and 16 people lost limbs. The team ethos of the 2013 Boston Red Sox, who also had been in last place the year prior, might be said to be perseverance and retaliatory justice. This is really a post-9/11 type of mentality, a understanding that the world could be dangerous, that sporting events, iconic sporting events could be disrupted, that innocent people could be killed at a moment's notice. Who's the lightning rod that year? There were 2 lightning rods that year. The first person was Bobby Valentine, who had been the manager the year previously, a really incredibly vivacious, controversial, loud, outspoken manager. Oftentimes attacked his own players verbally in the press. And he was really hated in Boston. He was really, really disliked in Boston. And so much of the ire for the year before, and that set the stage for 2013, was on Bobby Valentine. And what that did is allowed other players to not be the target. Again, think about the lightning rod as drawing energy in that year. Another lightning rod was David Ortiz. David Ortiz, after the marathon bombing, spoke to the fans at Fenway who were gathered there to pay tribute to the victims of the marathon bombing and to allow the city to heal a little bit. His speech was this: all right, Boston. This jersey that we wear today, they were wearing a jersey that said Boston instead of the Red Sox. It doesn't say Red Sox, it says Boston. He then goes on to thank the mayor and the governor. And he says, this is our effing city and nobody gonna dictate our freedom. Stay strong. Thank you. That year, so much energy was coursing in and around the city and was going through David Ortiz in the leadership role that he was playing. The gamer that year might be said to be Mike Napoli, who is a catcher turned first baseman. The captain of the team, for all intents and purposes, was Dustin Pedroia. Wasn't the official captain. The magistrate or the judge was veteran backup catcher David Ross. And the jester was a journeyman by the name of Johnny Gomes. Written about Johnny Gomes, even bigger than the potential impact that Gomes might have on the Red Sox offense, is his impact on changing the Boston clubhouse. He's going to be the jokester, the gangster, the prankster, the class clown. Bring back the idiots being the phrase that was used for the 2004 Boston Red Sox. There's a lot of talk about chemistry that year with Boston. A lot of people who were saying that it wasn't really worth a whole lot. But ultimately, by the end of the year, when they saw this team and how it coalesced around the tragedy that occurred in Boston, people were believing in chemistry, and they were trying to understand it the best they could. Now, there's lots of things that I could talk about here in terms of social psychology and what these roles mean, what these teams did. But ultimately, as I was looking at the theories of social psychology, I was looking at organizational development theories, they were all falling flat in the face of these incredibly rich teams with all of these characters and all of these role players. An example of this theory is that recently, Deloitte's Kim Christoph came up with a concept about business chemistry. And she said that there are 4 personality types: pioneers, drivers, guardians, and integrators. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them, but what I am going to talk about is an industrial organizational psychologist by the name of Remus Serbin, just this past month, May of 2017, wrote a critique of this particular Miss Christfort's theory. And what he said was this. He said, these are all just old ideas. So much of social psychology has these old ideas. They're just repackaged in new ways. You might even say that some of the categories that I came up with are just simply repackaged. And what he said, and this is important, he said team chemistry is like cooking. Right? And this made a lot of sense to me. And I want to submit for your consideration one more time the lime. Imagine that the lime is like a person. Okay? This is your ingredient. When you have an organization, when you have a team, you have to know what your ingredients are. You have to know all of the different elements that they have because they are complex and they respond in different ways depending on how you use them. So the lime, right? We can't know the lime.